I am human, I'm a person, I'm a complex being. I am human, I am spirit, I am more than I seem. I'm a diamond
On April
multifaceted.
27th, 1994, the world held its breath. The first democratic election in South Africa ended apartheid. One of the most inhumane systems of racial oppression was dismantled after decades of protest and resistance. For 46 years, apartheid had deprived the majority of the non-white population of major civic and social rights. Under the leadership of the Afrikaner-led National Party, major human rights violations were executed. Horrendous pain and humiliation was inflicted upon human beings who were classified as blacks, colored, or Indian. Non-white political representation was abolished. People were deprived of their citizenship. All major areas of daily living had been segregated: schools, healthcare, and beaches. Interracial marriages were prohibited. Through systematic forced removals, about 3.5 million non-white South Africans lost their homes and were forced into segregated townships. Neighborhoods and friendships were torn apart. Men and women who resisted apartheid became enemies of the state. They were tortured, incarcerated, and killed. How can a society heal from such atrocities? How can communities attend to the social, economic, and spiritual wounds that apartheid had created? What does it mean to strive for new ways of communal living when history still bleeds through? How can individuals deal with disastrous memories in healing ways? From its outset, the newly elected government under the leadership of Nelson Mandela saw the need to forcefully address these questions and to engender processes of healing on various levels. Between 1996 and 1998, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, became a major platform that offered a space for victims to share their stories. Even perpetrators of politically motivated violence got a chance to acknowledge their misdeeds and responsibility, and to receive amnesty after full disclosure of their offences. The TRC focused on gross human rights violations, such as torture and killings. It left untouched, however, the enormous affliction and humiliation that was caused by systematic degradation and exploitation in the workplace, by inferior education, police violence, and poverty.
From 93 until 98, I was chaplain to what was then called the Trauma Center for Victims of Violence and Torture. And it was in the period, the beginning of the democratic era in South Africa. It was a time when it was being decided that we would have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as one vehicle for South Africa to deal with its past and provide a bridge from the old order of apartheid into a democratic society. And before the commission even started, I asked the question, how many people will come to this commission? The answer was 23,000 people came, which we later found out. But my concern was, well, what about the rest of the country? Because my contention was that all South Africans had a story to tell. All South Africans had been affected by apartheid. All South Africans carried stuff in us because of the past the nation had traveled. But it was not true that all South Africans were pathological. It was not true that all South Africans needed a clinical intervention. So we needed to create spaces where South Africans of all sides of the struggle could tell each other their stories and deal with the past of the nation psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And that led us to create a methodology that we called a Healing of the Memories workshop. And so that began while I was part of the Trauma Center and later gave birth to the Institute for Healing of Memories. But it also grew on the one hand out of the reflection of myself and others on the past of the nation, but it also grew as a reflection, as I reflected on what had helped me to heal, because I had received a letter bomb in April of 1990. And so obviously I'd also traveled my own journey of healing. And so that personal reflection, as well as the national reflection, were, if you like, the foundations of what became the Institute for Healing of Memories.
Father Michael Lapsley had been active in the anti-apartheid movement and also in the African National Congress, ANC. In 1990, when negotiations between the National Party and the ANC had already begun, he became a victim of a letter bomb that almost killed him. He survived, yet the blast destroyed both of his hands and one of his eyes. Despite this horrendous act of violence, Father Lapsley refused to perceive himself as a defeated victim of apartheid. Scarred by this experience, he gradually transformed his purpose in life towards a ministry of healing. He used his own journey of pain as a resource to help South Africans to confront and embrace their own life stories. Through the Healing of Memories workshops, Father Lapsley's own life was transformed from freedom fighter to wounded healer. This transformation became foundational for the philosophy and the mission of the Institute, which opened its doors in 1998. The Institute for Healing of Memories believes that all South Africans have been messed up by apartheid. Henceforth, the political and spiritual task at hand is to restore a sense of common humanity that had been so profoundly damaged by the distorted political logic that constructed racialized groups of people by setting them apart and by creating divisive hierarchies between them. Accordingly, one of the big challenges the Institute took on since then has been to foster sensibilities towards the vision of a common humanity. In all areas of the work, this vision of interconnectedness is prominent. It is clear, however, that such a humanist approach can only be life-giving when the history of apartheid is faced simultaneously on a personal and communal level.
So, the Institute, the first principle, I think, or important philosophy that the work of the Institute is pinned on is that we are all spiritual beings and are therefore of infinite worth. And I think just that prime identity of our common humanity. And because we believe that we're spiritual beings, it means that the spirit can grow and it can also be damaged. And that's important in terms of the work that we do, because we talk about the physical and the psychological damage and pain, but we don't always talk about the spiritual damage, you know. And so it brings in that dimension when we talk about the spiritual being. The other important principle is that we can be both victim and victimizers. That the complexity of us being human and being spiritual beings is that sometimes in different times of our lives, we can be victims of situations, and at other times in our lives, we can be victimizers. And most of the time, we're both at the same time. We can be bullied at home by our sisters, our brothers, and we're a victim, and we go to school, and then we bully somebody else. And it can all happen in the space of a day. So we are all of that. And so it's understanding the complexity of what it means to be human, but also the impact that the actions that is done to us has on our own behavior and how we then see ourselves. Then the other important, I think, one is that we need to, that we all need to take responsibility for what has happened in our history and redeem it and take it forward. Yes, we didn't agree to that history, but history has happened. It is there. It sits in our lap. And so we all need to take responsibility for what we do with that history and how we take it forward. And linked to that is then facing history and facing ourselves, is to say, what has been our role in that history, and in that then facing who we are as a person.
The principles of the Institute are put into practice in 3 areas: the Healing of Memories workshops, the community dialogues, and a youth program called Restoring Humanity. At the core of the workshops resides a practice of autobiographical storytelling. Participants are invited to share significant moments of their lives in which the intersection between their own personal story and the story of the nation comes to the fore. The listeners don't comment or judge. They try to be present as much as possible to what the other person is saying. This way, people become witnesses to each other's experiences. Oftentimes, the shared stories touch upon deep feelings of abandonment, anger, and bitterness, yet also shame and guilt. Healing of memories is understood as an open-ended process in which poisoning emotions are released and responsibility for one's own actions and the deeds of others are acknowledged. It fosters an imagination that is realistic about the wounds and the scars that will remain. Simultaneously, it is a resourceful practice since it encourages people to discover and strengthen the potential for transformation in their own lives. The process begins with watching a film or concentrating on images that might trigger one's own memories. This way, people enter into a shared space. Since the groups consists frequently of different generations and people might come from different countries, their connections to the apartheid years differ. People ponder tough questions that seek to explore the effects of the country's past on one's own life. What did you do? What was done to you? What did you fail to do? The history of apartheid and the unresolved legacy of violence come up in all kinds of life issues. Over the years, the range of topics expanded. Participants deal with issues around HIV, AIDS, domestic violence, or xenophobia. These are personal and highly political at the same time. The workshops evoke memories that are felt deeply and still have an impact on people's life in the present. Exercises are employed, such as drawing and creating rituals that tap into the more unconscious dimensions of memory. The ritual that is created in the last segment of the workshop is especially dedicated to the release of negative emotions. It gives room for the participant to create hopeful images and symbols. Workshop facilitators describe the impact of the workshops on their own lives.
And after that healing of memories, I started dealing with self. I started dealing with self, saying, for how long am I going to cry? Am I going to sit here and become a victim? I said, I'm not going to be a victim. That's the time I took up my courage to say, I'm going to stand up and do something about it. Then I started studying about what does the virus does in one's body. And from there, when I found out about my status, I remember it was in April, and when they took my CD4 count was 10. By the time I started taking treatment, it was in August, and my CD4 count was not readable. And nurses and doctors, I could actually hear them speak, we don't think she will make it. I could hear them saying, we don't think she could make it. Then I told myself, I said, I will make it.
Truthfully, on my side, I always had the mindset of thinking that because I grew up here in South Africa and I grew up in Cape Town, I always thought in my mind that only South Africans go through painful experiences, and we're the only one in the world that has experienced greater pain, But when I went overseas, because the stereotype was that Europe or other countries are much better off than South Africa. But when I was able to have a chance to go there, and I found out myself that the same situations that I went through are the same things that I've experienced in my own life, in my family life, in my social life. Also, other people there have experienced them. They've experienced disappointment, they've gone under a period of depression and other commonalities or other issues that are social ills within our own family context. And for me, that was a great eye-opener that the world is world and the human beings are human beings everywhere in the world. And for me, it was a great sense of interconnectedness and knowing that I myself can be in South Africa, but I'm also a human being that is a current participant in the world, and engaging in that. It was quite profound and a lot of learnings that I received from that.
The healing of memories for me is, particularly the workshop process, is for me to reflect upon myself, that this has happened in my life, and I'm still on that journey, even it happened 10 years ago. It means that I'm acknowledging what has happened. I'm not burying it under the carpet, but I'm trying to say, this has happened. I can't let this put me down. I need to work forward for me to get rid of what has happened in the past. And also for me, it's also for a space of tranquility, because working also with young people, it gives me that kind of a peace that I can give a contribution to the young people, and also my experiences that has happened in the past with me, because I can see when I see young people and I hear these stories of young people, I can also see that has happened to me.
The workshops open up a space to get in touch with one's own deep feelings.
And doing that, being a facilitator, I fall in love with the process, because I believe that human beings need the space as the Institute creates to be able to get in touch with their own feelings. Because the space that I had been part before was discussion, but in the Healing of Memories workshop is trying to get in touch really with our own feelings, and then dealing with the issues for the past, and then seeing how we can use the wisdom of the past into the future.
There are two major emotions that come up in the workshop: anger and shame.
And in the workshops, you find out that when some people are telling stories in the different groups, because we break up in groups, you find out there's abuse going on. And the women are so angry. There's abuse going on in men. Mothers in the home, you find out that she's the only parent in the home. It's either the husband has, through divorces, the husband has left and she's left with children. And that anger also is still building up. And most of the times, she cannot relate that anger to the children, because children look up to the mother, says she's a provider. So she keeps it inside herself. And when they go to the Healing of Memories, you find out that the lid blows up. And they start speaking of things they have never said to anybody. When that space is created, that this is your space, and whatever you want to speak about, it's going to be here, and it's just, there's confidentiality in this room. And because I'm sure the Institute for the Healing of Memories has created this holy space, because women don't necessarily get this space. Because most of the time we are so busy in the morning, you're making porridge, you're going to work and whatever. There's no space. So when they use this space in a Healing of Memories workshop, it's like they have accumulated a lot of anger within themselves, maybe for years. And this particular time they've given this space, says, how are you feeling? At home, nobody asks them, how are you feeling? So it's very dramatic just to see how this line of work has really helped a lot of people.
And what we see now is that in our society, on both sides, it is absolutely important that we should deal with our past. Because if we don't deal with it, it will cause anger and a lot of frustration. And that anger, when it becomes when it reaches a boiling point, it will develop in violence and destructive behavior. You see, the problem with guilt and shame is that guilt is a cognitive thing. You can deal with guilt by talking about it. There's a legal guilt, and there's a religious guilt, and there's social guilt, and you can address it and you can deal with it. Shame hits back right at the heart of your existence, and we don't have a soul. We are soul. So when shame hits you, when it overpowers you, you actually become almost like a nobody, in a sense, because you feel like somebody must help you now to work through this shame so that it doesn't become destructive. And therefore I think we have an enormous important role to play in terms of dealing with shame, because shame takes out all the energy. Shame lies to you later. It says that you have no role to play, you can't play any role. People are just walking over you. You don't have any identity, So what people then do to get their identity back is they go to the other side of the coin, and they go overboard to try and create an identity which is actually not that relevant. So for us, I think we still need to work a lot harder in trying to deal with shame. Guilt is something that you can deal with, but shame is to really change the society from the inside out. We have to deal with the shame aspect.
The Institute for Healing of Memories initiates community dialogues. These dialogues emphasize the connection between personal and political issues.
The second part is what we call a community healing program, which we do take people because we believe that the healing, it always comes back to the individual, it always comes back to individual pain. But it is then about connecting your individual pain to collective pain, to community, to your nation, to the global pain. And so the community healing project it takes place within communities, identified communities that we're working with local partners, that is addressing some of the structural issues that causes pain. So in the Western Cape, we're working in a community which is called Delft. We're working in a community Atlantis and Masiphumelele, as well as the Noon. And then we get invited to work in other individual communities like Manenberg and Makassar and so on. But there's 4 communities that we consistently work with. Because again, if you want to do, as healing is a journey, learning is a journey, and you cannot have one-off things. So what we try to do is to engage with people over a period of time, so that they have time to think through things, process things, come back to the next engagement with some new renewed insights, renewed questions, new confusions, and then another facet and go on.
Another important issue that came to the fore in recent years is the rising xenophobia in South Africa. Community dialogues in KwaZulu-Natal have addressed the xenophobic outbreaks against Somalians, Congolese or Nigerian migrants, refugees and asylum seekers.
Like the dialogues we started running last year in April, we had a xenophobic attack which blew up in Durban, where foreign nationals were being beaten, were being killed with their South African nationality. So we saw it fit, says they don't know the story of South Africans, they don't know the story of Congolese or Luanda or whatever. So we ran these dialogues separately with foreign nationals, and we ran a dialogue with the South African nationals, and we had a mixed dialogue where people started listening from one another, and we ran a healing of memories together, bringing these 2 parties together. And in the last dialogue where there were mixed nationalities, there's a song which they sang, said, reach out and touch. So everybody sang that song and everybody started hugging. There was people saying, I didn't know that South Africa passed through this pain. So it's another way of bringing out the information of, like xenophobia. They say it's a fear of the unknown. They don't know what they are fearful of. Just looking at this black man, I'm scared of him. Why am I scared of him? Let me get next to him and ask him, my brother, what is your name? Where do you come from? Tell me about your country. I also tell you about South Africa. So those dialogues are helping us to relate, to know where you come from. It doesn't matter where you come from. It could be all South Africans, but issues also in the communities, because there's also a lot of issues. And those issues, when you go in the healing of memories, we start to touch up on those issues as well. Yeah.
These dialogues embody the interest of the Institute for Healing of Memories to engage with destructive issues of the present time and to support communal processes of non-violent communication. These goals are also embedded in the third initiative the Institute has developed. The Restoring Humanity Project is a youth initiative that has 3 strategic objectives: healing, prevention, and empowerment.
I think for the healing of memories also for young people, as I said, is also looking at our own healing and our own wounds. Because part of that, of the healing, is that our parents and grandparents were traumatized by the events that happened by the nation. And individually in our families, the youth were affected by that. Not necessarily they were there, but their parents, they were affected by what happened by their parents. But also part of the empowerment is able to understand what are the aspects that contributed to that, so that we could able to then move forward and find preventative ways so that we don't repeat the future again and build a more kinder and gentler future for ourselves.
Because of our history, history dictates where we are and history dictates where we want to go. We work in a way in which we bring diverse communities together because they've been separated for so long. So they can listen to one another, they can get to know one another, they can get to talk to one another and learn together and create what they want for the future together. So we work in a way where it is about moving people physically from communities to communities into spaces where they normally would not go, and into places that their parents did not have access to. And sometimes it's very simple things. It could be a beach, because during apartheid, the beaches were separated, So it is good for young people to know that though you might think things haven't changed, you are sitting on a beach that 20 years ago, your mother could not walk on. Your father could not swim in, So when you say, nothing has changed, no, things have changed.
The Restoring Humanities Project also helps young people to come to terms with difficult questions.
It gives them a space to talk. The same it was for me when I came to the Institute for the Healing of Memories. It gives them a space of a family and where they could be able to talk to one another. When these young people come together, they don't know one another at all. So sometimes it's very comfortable for them to talk to a group of strangers, so-called strangers, and actually let go. Because sometimes when they talk to perhaps their family members or a mother or father, they feel that somebody's going to judge them. Their parents particularly is going to just, why do you do this? Why do you feel this? So they would be able to feel comfort to talk about it. And young people feel that, this is the time for me where I can reflect upon myself and where I can see perhaps a little bit of hope and take back my life and not be hang on to the past, because a lot of things happens in young people's lives. So the communities that we work with, that the young people are faced with, a lot of gangsterism, drug abuse, sexual abuse. So those are the things that young people are faced with on a daily basis. And so it's difficult for them to actually talk to family members or even to friends. So when they come to the Institute for the Healing of Memories, particularly within the youth program, they could feel that we have a common ground. We can be able to talk to one another because we have this commonality, the pain, the trauma, and also the issues that is facing with one another. So they could share experiences. They could also share some perhaps motivation to one another. So those are the kind of issues and then the responses to that young people have upon this program. Yeah.
From the outset, the Healing of Memories work has had an international dimension, since the problems it grapples with are prevailing in slightly different ways all over the globe.
But in the first year that the Institute was founded, we were invited outside South Africa to 2 countries. One is to Rwanda, 4 years after the genocide, and also to New York City. And so that began increasing invitations from other parts of the world who saw that their situation was not the same, but the past was also coming back to bite them. And so the issue of dealing with the past, dealing with what has happened, has been, if you like, the underlying theme that has taken the Institute and myself personally to every corner of the globe.
And our organization provides workshops and presentations about the healing process. And we work in 5 different states. We work in New York and Minnesota and Arizona, California, and Hawaii. And the work varies by state to state. In New York at the moment, they're working with people who have just been recently incarcerated. And in Minnesota, their work is almost exclusively with veterans, and the same for Arizona. In Hawaii, they work a lot with the indigenous Hawaiian community, and they also work with women who have been in abusive relationships. And then we have a new pilot program, which is providing workshops for Los Angeles Police Department members and community members. In Los Angeles, there's a history of a lot of conflict between the community and with the Los Angeles police. There have been a lot of problems with police brutality and a loss of trust of the police by the community. These workshops that we do take place in South Los Angeles, which is the African American and Latino communities of Los Angeles, and it's a high poverty area as well. And so we felt it was really important to try and provide a safe space to bring these people from different groups together so that they can have an opportunity to share and see each other's humanity.
But we also have developed Healing of Memories workshops, a Healing of Memories workshops program in Luxembourg. We have had several workshops at different levels, and the latest case of a workshop was just last week, where we, with the support of Father Michael, we decided to organise a workshop for a mixed audience. More than half of the participants were Syrian refugees, in fact also 2 Iraqi refugees, and the rest of the participants were people living in Luxembourg or from different backgrounds. And so it was a very new experience for me and for the team, having this kind of not just the linguistic challenge, because it meant working with interpreters, also refugees, but trained interpreters from Syria, so working in several languages, but also working with these very different backgrounds, and we were. It was a challenge because we didn't know exactly what to expect. Some people said to us, it's too early to ask Syrian refugees to talk about their past. And we heard that, but we thought, okay, those who want to come will come. And in the end, it was an amazing experience. We noticed that the Syrian participants, just like the Luxembourgers, had a lot to share and to liberate themselves of,
Furthermore, in Sri Lanka, the Healing of Memories work evolved in surprising ways after the end of a civil war that had lasted for over 26 years. Here we can witness how people from different religious backgrounds can embark on the healing journey together.
Well, it was like this. We realized that after the end of the war, even though we got infrastructure going, we got the roads, we got electricity, we got things done in that sense. We never actually looked at people and what they've gone through and whether they have come to terms with it. And there's lots of people looking for closure, people whose loved ones have disappeared, for example, people looking, both victims and perpetrators are suffering, but we've not looked at any of that. So we realized after some time that this kind of program would be very, very helpful, and that's where we started. Yeah, again, if I just refer to the very latest workshop, because it's very fresh in my mind, there were lots of Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists and Christians. It was really a mixed group of young people. And this program, it's not really Christian in any way. So when we have the celebratory workshop or the sort of thing at the end of it, we have some kind of a ritual. But we included the gathas from the Buddhists, we included a surah reading from the Islam, then the Hindu girl did a sort of a reading of the Bhagavad Gita. So we were able to, and of course the biblical readings and things like that. So they were able to actually, what happens is that these differences are not important for ordinary normal people in their daily lives. We live beside each other and we interact on a daily basis. You look at the companies, there's everybody there. But it's just that when it comes to a situation, then these feelings are whipped up and then people get carried away with whatever it is their own, So it's actually this program, the good part of this Healing of Memories workshop is it's not religious. You can make it religious if you want.
The Healing of Memories work has its roots in South Africa. Nowadays, it encompasses many countries, perspectives, and voices. It taps into the desire to break the cycle of violence and to attend to the needs of the human family in generous and gentle ways.
I am human, I'm a person, I'm a complex being. I am human, I am spirit, I am more than I seem. I'm a diamond, multifaceted, I bring every part of me. This is who I am. I bring my ancestry, I bring spirit strong, I bring all of me. I am history, I am values and belief, I am love divine. This is all of me. I am human.